Well, here we are, Thoughts from the Office, Redneck's Pride Outdoors. Thoughts from the Office. I did that YouTube video yesterday on turkey calling, and it's just like the spigot opened up. Everybody in the last few days, it's changed from deer hunting and trapping to turkey hunting. And as we're talking to a lot of folks about turkey hunting, the majority of folks that I'm talking to are talking to me about calling, looking for calls, the whole gamut. And as we're talking to them about calls, whether it's box calls, pot calls, diaphragms, you name it, the one thing keeps popping up, especially in what I would call newer hunters or hunters who really haven't invested a lot of time in turkey hunting or haven't been able to yet, is there's this misconception that you grab a call, box call, pot call, diaphragm, and you just make it work. And that is a costly mistake. All calls, bar none, for turkeys, except for maybe an owl call or a crow call. But all calls for turkeys have to be broke in to get the maximum, most productive sound out of them. I see this a lot with box calls. When we make a box call and we tune it to give the tone that we want. But the longer or the more that box call is worked, the more sweet it becomes. And, on some of my high-end calls, where you're spending a lot of dollars, then yes, that box call is going to come to you pretty much sweet, because I'm taking that call every day for a week and spending 15-20 minutes on it, just working it, rechalking it, reworking it, rechalking it, reworking it, to get that sweet spot, to get it sounding sweet. That's your high-end call. Your $45 field call, I'm tuning it, getting it there, and it's up to you to get her sweet. Same thing with your pot call, your high-end pot call, your glass calls, your different surface pot calls. The high-end call, I will take a week and every day, 15-20 minutes, just work that baby in with the striker that I'm sending to you. But your $45 field call, I'm getting her broke in, I'm getting her to where she's tuned, and I'm counting on you to get her sweet. Your diaphragm calls, we're making one a press. And this is where most people really get themselves into a misunderstanding, because everybody's mouth is shaped different. Everybody's air control, whether you have any or not, is different. Everybody's air volume and force is different. I tend to talk loud, or I tend to talk aggressively, or with authority, if you will. I have a lot more volume and natural force, air pressure, than somebody who talks very soft and meek and mild. Okay? So when a person buys a diaphragm call, the first thing you've got to do is you got to break that call in for your mouth. You may have to trim some reed off. And I honestly believe most people don't need to trim the reed off, but they do. Not the reed, I'm sorry, the tape. You may have to trim some tape off because you get you just get that gag reflux. And when I see, and I tell people, listen, you'll get a better air quality seal the more tape you leave on your diaphragm. Which means what? It means you got to get a little grit to you. That means you've got to put that call in your mouth and leave as much tape as you possibly can, so you get a better air seal over top of that. You only want air going underneath it. All right, so the more tape you have on that diaphragm, the better your air seal is. That means you've got to maybe toughen yourself up a little bit, not be so gag. Maybe make yourself a little bit more gag resistant. Now, some of you can't, but, and how do you get more gag resistant? Put the call in there and make her happen. Force yourself to do it. And then once you get the call in there, you've got to form that call to your roof of your mouth and to the sides of your tongue and to the shape of your mouth. I would prefer, me personally, I prefer thick tape calls. We don't make thick tape calls too often anymore. Number one, it's hard to get the tape. And number two, most people can't tolerate thick tape. But the advantage that thick tape has over thin tape is that once you get the thick tape in your mouth and formed, meaning you get it all wet and get it all formed up into your mouth, and then you take it out of your mouth and let it dry, it is preformed. It flops right back into position. Where thin tape, a lot of times you've got to finagle it in your mouth a little bit to get it to form again, because thick tape doesn't hold. Thin tape doesn't hold the position that thick tape does. But thick tape isn't liked because it's thicker tape and people don't like the feel of it in their mouth. Also, when you get a diaphragm call, your outer edges of your frame, you can get that call sounding the way you want it by bending just ever so lightly the outer horseshoe of your frame, either making it tighter, bending it straighter, or bending it just a little bit of a horseshoe. That will give you reed relax or reed tightening. And when I'm talking about doing it, when you do that, I mean, it's like next to nothing, one way or another. Straighten it out one way or another, or coming down. When we make the calls, we don't put any bend whatsoever in that. We don't form that frame any way, shape, or form on up, to fit your mouth, because I don't know I don't know what your mouth is. So it's relatively straight, and you may want to just bend your sides down just a touch. Just a touch. I mean, almost nothing to get the tone that you're looking for with the air pressure and tongue pressure that you apply. I'm amazed at how I can take any call, pot, box, diaphragm. I'll take a box call, and there will be 5 people standing at my table at a show, and I'll take that box call and I'll hand it to one person, and that person will work that box call, and it will give out a distinct sound and tone. Take it from that person and hand it to person number 2, and that will have a different sound and tone. Same call, different hands. And you go right down to all 5 of those, and what you literally have is 5 different sounds and tones coming out of the same box call for no other reason than the person holding the box call. Some people will hold them lighter. So in other words, their holding hand will be held light. Some will hold it tight. Some will hold it forward. Some will hold it back. Some will hold it higher on the sides. Some will hold it lower on the sides. Some will have a real light hold on the handle. Some will have a more heavy hold on the handle. Some will have more downward pressure. Some will have less down pressure. All those factors play into the tone and sound that box call is making. And you have to take that box call, and you have got to find that sweet spot and your hand position and your pressure on that box call. Because I can make that box call sound just ring right on through, and I hand it to you and it may not ring. Okay? Same thing with your pot call. The way you hold your striker, the position you hold your striker, angle-wise, how far from the tip, how far up the shaft of the striker, all these little things. Your downward pressure, your light pressure, your circles on your yelps, your clucks, all this. They're all different from everybody. So you've got to take that call, and you've got to find that sweet spot. You're not going to just pick up a call and find that sweet spot. And I see great callers who understand this. And they pick up a box call and they play with it for a little, and then all of a sudden within 2-3 minutes, within a minute, within 30 seconds sometimes, it's like just singing. Okay? Because they understand the downward pressure versus holding it, the whole kit and caboodle. Mouth call people are the same way. Okay, they understand the pressures, the ups and the downs. They'll put a call in their mouth, they'll feel it. And they know if they got to push the frame up, they got to push the frame down. They know if they got to cut the tape or not. Okay? But they sit there. And the thing with the latex mouth call is, for me, I'll take a brand spanking new call that I just made, and it's usually about 15-20 minutes of working that call in my mouth before I get the sweet sound that I'm looking for. And I know that every call that I get, I'm going to spend, I figure, a half hour blowing that call. When I first put it in my mouth, I'm just getting it to fit. I'm just getting it to work in. I'm just getting it to where I know my air pressure is right on that reed. I'm getting it to where I know the air pressure is not going over top of that reed. And that first 5 minutes or so, it's just positioning that call, getting that call to form to my mouth. The next 5 minutes or so is I'm just getting my tongue pressure to that call. Because every different type of call you buy, the stretch is going to be different. Meaning you got one, you have a Sassy Frassy. That will be stretched differently than a Red Reaper. A Red Reaper is stretched just a little bit touch more. Why? I want that higher pitched sound. My Sassy Frassy is stretched a little bit less. Why? Because I want that high, that hard, low, snotty sound. My my split V is the one that's probably stretched the least, because I want that just nasty, snarly, low tone. But with that less stretch comes more airflow. Okay? Comes more tongue pressure with more airflow to get that tone working to where I want it to be. So you've got to take a call and you have got to play it. Figure this. A turkey call, whether it's a box call, pot call, or mouth call, it is an instrument, and you've got to learn how to play it. Now, I love it when I hear people say, I put it in my mouth and it went right on off. I love it, I love it, I love it. But the reality is you still got to break her in, because the longer you play it, the sweeter it sounds. The better you learn the temperaments of that call, the better you learn your air pressure with that call, and you get to the point to where you're subconsciously doing it and don't even think about you doing it. Same thing with your box call. Same thing with your pot call. You play that call so well that you just subconsciously do it without thinking about it. And with that, I'm going to leave it there. Redneck's Pride Outdoors. I'll catch y'all later.